Okay, today we're going to be talking about evaluating formal and informal cultural responsive assessments. Comparing assessments and evaluations. Assessment and evaluations are two different concepts with a number of differences between them, starting with the objectives and focus. So assessments and evaluations are not very commonly related. Assessments provide feedback on performance. So when we're assessing something, we're looking for how a student performed on a certain standard or a certain learning objective. It gauges the knowledge and competency of students, and it's a diagnostic. It's a formative assessment. It's formal. It has very concrete answers. It's absolute yes or no, right or wrong, and it's reflective over the learning of what the teacher has taught and the topic of it. Evaluation is determining whether standard was met. Okay, so they're evaluating if the student learned the obligated standard that their teaching goal was set out to define, not just by a test. It guides assessments. So it gives the evaluation, it gives a direction for the learning assignment. It's a measure of quality of the assessment. So it's showing the quality of the work. And then the evaluations are judgmental. They're summative. So they sum up the whole unit, and they're perspective, because they can look in a variety of ways. I mean, they can be a project, they can be a writing, all when the student is interpreting how they met their goal. They must be able to think critically, to analyze, and to make inferences. Effective and ineffective assessments of student learning. Everyone can agree that applied knowledge is crucial to the learning process, so standardized testing need to do better when measuring it. As a whole school, we are working on a shift of getting away from standardized assessments, but there is a lot of obstacles in the way, like states testing or ACTs or college even. A lot of the college tests are still pencil paper, fill in the bubble. And so if we're preparing students for college, we still have to make sure we are doing tests and preparing them for what they're going to see in college, because the way college is being taught is not going to change. Developing strategies that enable one to apply critical thinking to everyday life. So by teaching assignments, we need to make sure that, and when we are assessing them, that we are doing them in a way that they can apply them to life. So in involving critical thinking skills will help them to be successful in the ACT or in life. Active and cooperative learning. I'm all about doing cooperative learning, doing group projects, actively getting them involved in the classroom, doing experiments in science, and making sure people are being active when they learn, because I just think it stimulates the brain so much more and allows valuable information to come in. Don't just recall information. Make the assessments impactful and meaningful. Just try to get away. Don't always do a pencil and paper test. Group project or presentation for formative assessments, tests for summative assessments is something we could look at. The entire value of what a teacher does in a classroom during a given year and how the teachers performed in the prior years often boils down to what a statewide blanketed test spits out in the way of a student results. And this is something I think education as a whole is trying to do away with. We are trying to get rid of having the standardized test be so impactful and so stressful on teachers that we're just teaching to test, when in fact when we're teaching to the test, that is just hurting students. We are not developing those higher level thinking skills that we need to do. Effective teaching is directly related to effective learning. So I think a hands-on motivative teacher will inquire students to be effectively learning, which then in return will produce the results that principals and teachers would like to see. The boring pencil and paper daily routine and just trying to teach the test, the students are only going to remember for the test. They're not going to have that lifelong or critical thinking, the memorization that we'll need to carry on and build on down the years. They'll just remember it for the test, and then they'll forget it in a month or a year. Cultural responsive assessment practices. Be open to assessment strategies using rubrics. I think that is a huge thing, that allowing students to show their learning in many ways. If you do a project, let them do a slideshow. If it's in science, let them do a slideshow over endangered species. They could make a poster over endangered species. They could write a paper over endangered species. They could draw an animal and then talk about it in front of the class and show their arts. So just letting the students show how they learned the learning objective, the standard, in many different ways. The manner in which a student demonstrates learning is irrelevant. So whether they show it through a PowerPoint or presentation or give a speech in front of the class, that's irrelevant. If they got the knowledge they need to know that you set that their goal for them, that's what's important. Get to know your students. I think it is important that we know what our students each prefer and get to know them, and building a relationship with them will better help your classroom. And if you know students would like to get up and speak, then maybe doing speeches for your class is probably not the right direction you should go. By making student experience focus of their learning, performance assessments serve as an important and effective vehicle for recognizing and exploring students' identities. So by doing fun, creative projects, you will learn more about the students, and they will get to show themselves in your class more and show their true identities in your classroom, which will help build a relationship. Nearly all assessments depend upon language in some way. Language differences among students are associated with differences in the ways they construe the language of an assessment question or task. So even if a student is an English language learner, the way the question is asked could confuse them because they do not have a concrete knowledge of our language. So making sure that we are providing a equal opportunity for all, looking at assessments in a different way will be crucial to be culturally responsive in our assessments. Student well-being. Well-being is a positive sense of self, spirit, and belonging that we feel when our cognitive, emotional, and social and physical needs are being met. It is supported through equity and respect for our diverse identities and strengths. Psychological, social, physical, and cognitive functioning and capabilities that students need to live happy and fulfilling life. Positive relationships. Students want a sense of belonging, and student relationships. Student well-being is important for the morale of your class. If you can't have a student's well-being taken care of in your classroom, you cannot begin to learn. So you have to be a caring and teacher to have all the students' needs met before you can be able to instruct. By being a great leader and having the students' needs met, that will help your classroom. So building a relationship with them, getting to know them, showing them that you care will help their students have a good well-being in your class. Teaching them how to be lifelong learners is something that is important as an educator. So showing them that you care and being culturally responsive to them and getting to know them will help improve their well-being in there, just so that everyone feels involved. Because even if you don't have culturally responsive assessments, if you're not taking care and making everybody feel appreciated or like they have a voice in your classroom, you're still going to struggle to meet all these learning objectives and have trouble on your assessments. Improving assessments and school leadership. So formal and summative assessments. Our formal assessments should be done throughout the unit. You should be assessing whether their learning objectives are being made as we go through a unit. I like to do different poster projects or give them a variety of opportunities to show that they're learning their objectives. The summative assessment is at the end. So whether that is a big project you make a rubric for at the end to show their learning, or if it's even a test, because I'm a firm believer that we still have to test the students, because so many students depend on the ACT for college. And that's something we have to prepare them for. I still think pencil and paper is necessary sometimes, but I do think throughout the year there are also other opportunities we can show for assessments. Measurement of student learning through assessment is important because it provides useful feedback to both instructor and students. So when you're doing your assessments, it is crucial that you look at the evidence of them over time. Are students passing your assessments? Are they failing them? Is it because you could do something better as a teacher? Could the students study harder? Could they do something to improve their scores? So, you have to be very reflective as a teacher to make sure what you're doing in the classroom is effective both for your teaching and the students. Monitoring student achievement and purposeful assessment. So that is important. Successful leadership influence student learning. Leadership is second to only classroom instruction. So being a good leader in your classroom is important. Showing the students in your classroom that you care, and just being the do right guy, as I like to say, in the classroom is important. Showing them that each person has a value in your classroom and that you are respectful to students and other coworkers is important. Proper leadership and relationships all affect positive student learning and achievement. And here are my reference pages, all 18. Thank you.